My name's Helen Perkins and I'm here to launch Pearson's new suite of Early Years Educator qualifications. I began my own career in early years as a volunteer in a playgroup, and when my children moved on to nursery, I became a parent helper. I loved it so much I enrolled on a BTEC national diploma. Once qualified, I worked in the foundation stage and in Key Stage 1. Before qualifying as a nursery nurse, and then subsequently as a teacher, I thought, this is a job I can do. Why do I need a qualification? But I realised what I considered good practice was more luck than judgment. Through studying for my degree and my master's, I realised that actually I'd barely scratched the surface of what there was to know about children's care education, particularly in terms of theory and understanding how children grow, learn and develop. After many years working with children, I now work at Solihull College, and I take great pride in developing the next generation of early years educators. Being qualified makes a difference. The quality of the children's workforce has been the focus of government policy for some time. Dame Claire Tickell's review of the early years foundation stage highlighted the importance of having qualifications that are of a high standard and meet the needs of learners. Her recommendations resulted in a review of qualifications led by Professor Cathy Nutbrown. Her review considered how best to strengthen qualifications and career pathways for young people new to the early years sector and for those already employed there. The new Early Years Educator BTEC and work-based learning qualifications from Pearson are a step towards realising this ambition, creating a professional workforce and a professional identity for those who work with our most vulnerable children. I was invited by Professor Nutbrown to join her panel of experts in reviewing the quality of early years qualifications. Each panel member had their own area of expertise, their own interests, and brought a different perspective to the discussions. As you can imagine, there was much discussion and debate, and sometimes disagreement, but the one thing we all agreed on was that any recommendations we made would be for the benefit of children. Foundations for Quality, the independent review of early years and childcare qualifications, was published in 2012. The consultation highlighted an overwhelming desire for any new early years qualification to reflect the quality and content of the old NNEB. This was synonymous with professional, high-quality education and care. Many of the respondents to the review commented that the rigour and entry requirements of that qualification, the course assessment regime, meant that achieving an NNEB represented a high standard of achievement, of discipline and professional conduct. Holders of that qualification had a universal understanding of what could be expected in terms of job role and level of knowledge and understanding. The Pearson Early Years Educator qualification suite reflects this. Employers said that they could be assured that candidates holding that award had a good grounding in early education and care, which they could apply to their practice. It is this attention to rigour and quality that the new Pearson Early Years Educator qualifications reflect. The Nutbrown Review recommendations called for qualifications to foreground child development, play, pedagogy, observation and assessment, and planning with a robust assessment regime. Practitioners must understand the research and theory that underpins their practice, their day-to-day decisions. For without that theoretical knowledge, what they do can lack rigour and rationale. It's like a building without foundations, or to draw on the hair or care analogy that we're very familiar with. It's like a hairdresser with blunt scissors. The new Pearson qualifications are congruent with Nutbrown's recommendations. They meet the full and relevant criteria that were published by the National College in response to Professor Nutbrown's ideas. I'm really pleased to find that there are incremental steps in the Early Years Educator qualification within the BTEC suite. The BTEC Children's Play, Learning and Development qualification allows learners to take incremental steps towards achieving their goal. A key concern is the requirement for English and Maths GCSE grade C or above for students progressing from Level 1 and Level 2 qualifications. They're good practitioners and we don't want to lose them. The new BTEC CPLD allows this incremental progression towards their early years educator qualification. We hear much from employers about in fact in every employment sector, about the poor quality of literacy and numeracy skills. Professor Nutbrown highlighted this in her review, noting that lack of basic literacy and numeracy requirements and entry to courses was a potential weakness. Given the importance of these skills in communicating with parents and supporting the learning and development of babies and young children, it is key that we get this right. Almost half of the respondents from the review mentioned the importance of communication skills being a key part of the Early Years Educator qualification, with many specifically mentioning how inappropriate it would be for practitioners without good literacy and numeracy skills to be educating young children. So while the challenge is very clear, the criteria will make a real difference in the quality and in line with the review's recommendations. A further area of concern highlighted in the review was the difference in the content and assessment between the work-based learning qualifications and the full national diploma qualifications. I'm here pleased to see that there is an increased robustness in the work-based qualification. This work-based learning route incorporates many of the review's recommendations, and I see the findings here reflected in terms of the content and depth of study, the focus on child development, and theory, which is to be taught and assessed, as well as evidence through practice in the workplace. The review was very clear on the importance of the development of academic skills for all practitioners to enable progression to higher education. Employers expressed their dissatisfaction with some practitioners' lack of knowledge of child development and their ability to apply theory when planning and assessing young children's individual needs. By adopting Professor Nutbrown's recommendation of a 2-year course with the opportunity to accredit prior learning for practitioners with experience, it gives practitioners time to develop this theoretical knowledge over time, strengthening the work-based route and aligning the qualifications, content and knowledge, as well as skills to ensure employers know what to expect from an early years educator, whichever pathway they have taken. Employers noted that many basic practical skills were not being sufficiently developed too. For example, care routines, nursery rhymes, the importance of play in children's learning. These are very well established in the Pearson suite of qualifications, all early years educators being required to demonstrate them in practice, as well as to understand why they are so important. Employers were also keen to have a badged qualification that meant they could understand exactly what they were going to get. The Pearson Early Years Educator qualifications address employers' concerns very, very well. So what does it mean to be qualified to work within the early years? These are the basics. A thorough understanding of child development, play, and providing a grounding in social and emotional, physical, cognitive development of children from birth to 7. A real understanding of why children do what they do and how they might develop at different times and different skills and abilities, and how best to meet their developmental needs. How to encourage children's play at different stages of their development. Being able to respond to atypical development and whether there's a cause for concern and what course of action to take. And keeping children safe and well. In essence, what a practitioner can and should do to support all children as they grow and learn. There's agreement in the sector that professionalisation is the way forward if the workforce is to achieve parity in terms of esteem and status with the rest of the education system. If it is to meet the high aspirations of government policy. I was returned to this quote from Professor Tricia David to express my hopes for the early years workforce of the future. If we regard children as capable, strong and clever, then the people who work with them must also be brilliant, capable, strong and clever. In her interim report, Professor Nutbrown said, good qualifications, taught well, ensure those training to enter the workforce and those who are already working with babies and young children can be supportive. The right blend of theoretical knowledge and practical skills. When these are combined with the commitment and passion in the early years workforce, we will have a workforce to be proud of, and we'll see better outcomes for children in their early years as well as their later phases in life. The new Pearson Early Years Educator suite of qualifications meet these requirements and are the first steps toward improving quality outcomes for children and families, and should be welcomed by the early years sector.